So for 56 years, Jack Brabham's record stood as this, well, basically an impenetrable fortress.
Yeah, it really did. To win a Formula One race in your 40s, let alone at 44, like Brabham did back in 1970, it just seemed biologically and mechanically impossible in the modern era of the sport.
Completely impossible. The sheer G-forces, the required microsecond reaction time.
Right, and just the sheer physical degradation of wrestling a modern Stratofic car around a circuit for 2 hours.
Exactly. It all suggested that age was the ultimate insurmountable barrier until today.
Until today, Sunday, June 14, 2026.
Yeah. Lewis Hamilton didn't just beat a grid of drivers who are, in some cases, literally half his age in Barcelona today. Driving in the iconic red of Scuderia Ferrari, he beat the most unforgiving, pedantic, and ruthless legal document in global sports.
The FIA rulebook.
The rulebook, yeah. And welcome to the broadcast, everyone.
Glad to be here. It's the ultimate triumph of both human endurance and regulatory navigation. What Hamilton achieved today completely recontextualizes our understanding of driver longevity. Because when Brabham won that 1970 French Grand Prix, the cars were, wildly different beasts.
Oh, cool.
They were incredibly dangerous, yes, but they were not the hyper-complex aerospace projects we see today.
Right.
The modern Formula One car requires the driver to operate as a human supercomputer.
Processing telemetry, managing thermal degradation, adjusting differential settings mid-corner.
All while pulling 5Gs.
Right. And that is exactly why today's victory is so monumental for you tuning in. It's not just about raw pace. To win today, you have to survive an environment where, like, a fraction of a millimeter on a skid block or a fraction of a kilometer per hour in the pit lane can just completely erase your victory.
It's ruthless.
It is. But hey, before we get into the absolute granular details of the gauntlet Hamilton had to run today, just a quick disclaimer. Everything we discuss on the broadcast today is strictly for educational and informational purposes.
Yeah, nothing here constitutes professional advice.
Definitely not. And it's certainly not an endorsement for you to go test traction limits in your local supermarket car park.
Please leave the telemetry to the professionals.
Exactly. And the telemetry is exactly where this story begins, right? Because the race we watched today actually started being decided on Friday afternoon.
It did. To understand how a car survives Sunday, you have to understand the paralysis of Saturday night.
The Parc Fermé regulations.
Right, Parc Fermé, which literally translates to closed park from French.
Right, the lockdown.
Exactly. The moment a car rolls out for Saturday qualifying, it is locked into Parc Fermé conditions until Sunday's formation lap.
Which is agonizing. Looking at the telemetry from this weekend, it's just fascinating how much of a gamble the Friday setup has become.
It is an incredibly restrictive paradigm. You're essentially asking an engineering team to solve a multivariable calculus problem, but, with half the variables missing.
Because the suspension kinematics, the ride height, the core aerodynamic configurations, they're all locked in.
Locked in tight. During qualifying on Saturday, you want the car dumped as low to the ground as legally possible.
To maximize that ground effect downforce.
Exactly. And you're running on absolute fumes to reduce weight, with the tires operating at a single-lap thermal peak.
But then, on Sunday, that same car has to start with a massive fuel load.
Which physically compresses the suspension.
Right. So if you bottom out on the asphalt too aggressively because you chase Saturday's qualifying pace,
You will destroy the floor plank and face instant disqualification.
So it's this massive compromise. It's like studying for a massive exam, locking in your answers the night before, and just hoping the questions don't change in the morning.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You have to predict fuel loads, track temp, tire wear, all in advance.
And the list of what you can actually change overnight is painfully brief, isn't it?
Oh, painfully.
Like you can adjust the front wing flap angle, add fuel, bleed the brakes.
You can manage the tires, repair some damaged parts, but crucially, only with identical spec replacements, and you need FIA approval for that.
Right. But you absolutely can't touch the rear wing, you can't alter the anti-roll bars, and you certainly can't change the gearbox ratios.
Never.
Which, creates that brilliant strategic paradox we see when a team discovers a fatal flaw on Saturday night. Let's say the telemetry shows the gearbox synchros are failing.
Or the power unit is losing compression.
Yeah. If you start from your hard-earned grid position, you're basically guaranteed a DNF.
And this is where the game theory of Formula One becomes utterly ruthless. The penalty for breaching Parc Fermé, changing that failing gearbox or ripping up the setup, is a mandatory start from the pit lane.
Right, so the entire field takes the grid, the lights go out, and you are held at the end of the pit lane until the last car passes the exit line.
You are spotting the field a massive time delta.
But strategically, taking that penalty is often the smartest move on the board, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you sacrifice track position to guarantee mechanical survival.
But what I find even more compelling is when teams intentionally break Parc Fermé, not for reliability, but purely for setup correction.
Yes. Exactly.
Like, we've seen weekends where a team realizes their qualifying setup is just going to shred the tires in the race due to an unexpected temperature spike.
So they willingly absorb the pit lane penalty.
Right, just to unlock the suspension, alter the camber in tow, and give their driver a car that can actually fight through the field.
It fundamentally changes the regulatory philosophy from a deterrent into a strategic currency.
Wow, yeah, a currency.
The FIA intended Parc Fermé to reduce costs, right? To stop teams from building dedicated qualifying engines and race engines.
And the pit lane penalty was supposed to be this draconian punishment?
But in the modern era, data is so precise that strategists can calculate exactly how many places they can recover with an optimized setup versus a compromised one.
So they model the entire race and determine that starting 20th with the right camber is mathematically superior to starting 10th with the wrong one.
The penalty becomes a calculated transaction.
Which perfectly illustrates the constant tug-of-war between the governing body and the pit wall. Is it a flaw in the system or just brilliant strategic thinking?
Honestly, it's a bit of both. It's a relationship defined by friction.
For sure. So the engineers lock in their compromises, the cars survive the night, and Sunday arrives.
Race day.
Race day. But before we even get to turn one, the procedures for simply getting off the line fairly have become this massive technological arms race.
We're moving from the garage to the tarmac now.
Right. Let's look at the formation lap. The casual viewer just sees the cars weaving aggressively to build tire temperature.
But the real complexity is happening within the carbon fiber brake ducts.
Tires get all the attention, but managing brake temperature on that slow formation lap is a highly delicate operation, isn't it?
It is extremely delicate. The carbon composite brake discs and pads on these cars operate in a specific extreme thermal window.
Usually between 400 and 800 degrees Celsius, right?
Exactly. If they fall below that threshold, the driver hits the pedal and essentially experiences no deceleration. The carbon won't bite.
Wow.
So on the formation lap, you see drivers simultaneously applying the throttle and the brake, just dragging the calipers to generate immense friction.
Pushing all that thermal energy into the core of the discs.
Right.
But they have to balance that heat transfer with the risk of glazing the pads, don't they?
Yeah, that's the danger. If they push the surface temperature too high, too fast, without proper airflow,
A pad surface physically glazes over.
and it loses all its friction coefficient.
So they're threading this intense thermal needle while desperately trying not to overtake the car in front.
Because maintaining exact grid order on the formation lap is strictly policed. No overtaking unless a car ahead has a mechanical issue.
And every driver must find their exact box before the sequence begins. Which brings us to the actual grid alignment.
Right, and that policing extends to the exact millimeter they park in their grid box.
Because the FIA completely rewrote the starting procedure rules for the 2025 season, didn't they?
They had to. We had those chaotic pear-shaped starts in 2023 and 2024 where drivers were creeping laterally, angling their cars towards the racing line.
Or stopping inches past the yellow line to gain a launch advantage.
The optical sensors just weren't cutting it anymore. The FIA had to integrate microsensors directly into the tarmac of the grid boxes.
So now the telemetry measures the exact longitudinal and lateral footprint of the tire carcass.
Exactly. If the contact patch deforms past the boundary line before the lights go out, the system triggers a binary penalty.
There is no longer a human steward reviewing a blurry camera angle. It is an automated telemetry strike.
Which brings us to the most psychologically intense moment in all of sports.
The 5 red lights.
The sequence of the gantry lights illuminating is rhythmic 1 to 5 once the last car is parked. But the pause before they extinguish is what's fascinating.
The exact moment the race begins is completely governed by a randomized algorithmic delay.
Yes, the most critical anti-cheating mechanism in the sport.
I just marvel at the psychology here. I mean, human reaction time to a visual stimulus is biologically capped, right? An elite athlete might react in roughly 150 to 200 milliseconds.
Right. So if the light sequence was fixed, say exactly 2 seconds after the fifth light turns on,
These drivers would bypass visual reaction entirely.
they would rely on internal timing, anticipating the drop, and releasing the clutch paddles based on instinct alone.
They would essentially be legally jump-starting. It'd be anticipation instead of pure reaction.
Precisely. So by randomizing the drop, making it 0.8 seconds one week and 2.4 seconds the next, the FIA forces the driver to remain purely reactive.
It strips away all that anticipation.
And managing the launch is incredibly complex because it's not a simple pedal. The drivers are operating dual clutch paddles behind the steering wheel.
Right, and during the formation lap, they conduct practice bites to find the exact friction point of the carbon clutch plate.
And they map that exact bite point into the steering wheel software.
So when the red lights are on, they hold one paddle fully compressed and the other paddle at exactly that pre-calibrated bite point.
Yes. When the randomized lights finally vanish, they drop the first paddle instantly.
Allowing the car to lurch forward on the preset bite.
And then they manually modulate the second paddle to manage wheel spin against the asphalt's grip level.
Because if they drop both too fast,
The anti-stall mechanism engages, the engine cuts power to prevent stalling, and they are engulfed by the entire field.
oh man, it's brutal. Or conversely, if they react a millisecond before the lights extinguish, the telemetry loops catch them.
Instantly, we've seen telemetry catch a jump start of 0.04 seconds.
Which is just electronic enforcement at its finest. It's
Yeah.
regulatory whack-a-mole. Every time a driver games a rule, the FIA writes a new one.
And then the driver serves a drive-through penalty, effectively losing 20 seconds of race time. Their afternoon is ruined before they've even reached the first corner.
The margins are utterly microscopic. So the cars are away, the launch is clean, they've survived the night locked away, they got off the line, safely off the line.
But the biggest variable determining who wins isn't just engine speed, is it?
No, it's survival.
And in F1, survival means tires.
Absolutely. The entire narrative of the race is ultimately dictated by how these drivers manage the contact patch.
Those few square inches of Pirelli rubber actually touching the ground.
Tire strategy isn't just about choosing between soft, medium, or hard compounds anymore. It's a complex study in thermal hysteresis and track evolution.
So let's break down the menu of tires.
Mm-hmm.
In the 2025 regulations, there are 6 dry weather compounds, ranging from C1, which is the hardest, to C6, the softest.
And Pirelli nominates 3 of those compounds for each race weekend.
Now, the old baseline rule was pretty simple. You just had to use 2 different dry compounds, which basically guaranteed at least 1 pit stop.
Right. But the 2025 updates changed everything.
Yeah, the 2025 rule says drivers must now use 3 sets of tires across 2 different compounds, and one of those compounds must be a designated mandatory race compound.
Usually the medium or the hard. But wait, doesn't forcing a specific mandatory compound kind of stifle creative strategy?
You would think so, but it actually creates a much more complex puzzle. Teams now have to decide exactly when to burn that mandatory compound based on traffic and track evolution.
Yeah, track evolution. The silent dictator of strategy.
Exactly. When a weekend begins, the track is green, it's dusty, it lacks grip. As the cars complete laps, they lay down a microscopic layer of rubber into the pores of the asphalt.
Rubbering in.
Right. This massive increase in grip changes how the tire interacts with the surface.
So if a strategist forces their driver onto the mandatory hard compound too early on a green track,
The tire will never reach its thermal operating window. The driver will slide around, destroying the surface through graining and just bleed lap time.
but if they wait too long, they risk an early safety car deployment, trapping them on degrading soft tires while their rivals pit cheaply for the mandatory set.
The strategy becomes a constantly recalculating matrix of probabilities.
And speaking of tire destruction, we have to distinguish between wear and thermal degradation, don't we?
Yes. Wear is just the physical abrasion of the rubber against the asphalt, literally scrubbing the tire down to the canvas.
But thermal degradation is far more insidious.
Much more. As the tire flexes and distorts under heavy cornering loads, it generates internal heat, which is hysteresis.
And if the core temperature exceeds the chemical operating window, the rubber begins to structurally fail.
That's when we see blistering versus graining. If the core gets too hot while the surface is relatively cool, the rubber expands and literally erupts through the surface.
Creating deep blisters that just destroy traction.
Right. But if the surface gets too hot while the core is cold, the surface rubber melts, tears off, and immediately sticks back onto the tire in uneven clumps.
That's graining.
Yes, the driver has to actively manage the balance of front and rear grip to prevent either scenario.
While still pushing for lap time. It's wild. But the most extreme application of strategy is entirely geographic, isn't it? Let's talk about the Monaco exception.
Oh, Monaco. The FIA recognized that the streets of Monaco defy all conventional aerodynamic racing logic.
So they implemented a Monaco-exclusive regulatory anomaly in 2025, a mandatory two-stop rule,
Requiring two different compounds.
even if the race is declared wet.
Exactly. And the why is fascinating. Monaco is defined by the absolute premium on-track position. The circuit is so narrow, and modern ground effect cars are so wide that overtaking on pace alone is functionally impossible.
Unless the car ahead makes a catastrophic error.
Right. Historically, this led to extreme management races where the leader would intentionally drive seconds off the pace, backing the entire pack up to preserve their tires.
Knowing nobody could pass them anyway, it really neutered the spectacle.
It did. So by forcing a mandatory two-stop race, the FIA uses this rule to force strategic variety, turning the pit stops into the primary battlefield.
They weaponize the pit lane, because if you can't pass on track, the only delta you can exploit is in the pit box.
It forces the teams into aggressive undercut attempts, pitting a lap earlier than the car ahead to exploit the immediate pace of fresh rubber on the outlap.
But in Monaco, the undercut is uniquely dangerous because of traffic.
Right, incredibly dangerous. If you pit and reemerge behind a slower midfield car, you are trapped.
Your fresh tire pace advantage is totally nullified by the physical inability to overtake.
And your rival will simply overcut you by staying out in clean air.
And applying this rule to wet conditions is just unprecedented.
Usually, rain nullifies all tire mandates because survival becomes the only metric.
Right.
But forcing two stops in the rain in Monaco means teams have to judge the crossover point between full wet tires and intermediate tires not once but twice.
Or risk gambling on dry tires on a damp track just to fulfill the stop requirement without losing track position.
It injects severe operational jeopardy into a track that otherwise encourages a procession.
It really does. So we have our tires, we have our speed, but strategy only works until things go wrong.
And they always go wrong.
Always. How does the sport manage wheel-to-wheel combat at 300 kilometers per hour? Let's transition into the chaos protocols, the rules governing how these drivers actually fight each other.
The foundational rule of engagement is the definition of the track itself, the white lines.
Track limits.
Right. Historically, track limits were a subjective nightmare. Stewards had to judge whether a driver gained a lasting advantage by running wide.
It was so inconsistent.
Infuriating for the teams. Now, the policing is absolute. The strict four wheels outside the white line rule.
Using those microsensors embedded in the curbs and the high-speed optical tracking cameras.
They operate on a binary logic.
Right.
If the entire contact patch of all four tires crosses the outer edge of the white line, a strike is logged.
And the arsenal of penalties stacks with ruthless efficiency. 3 strikes yield a black and white warning flag.
The fourth strike is an automatic 5-second time penalty added to the driver's race time.
And the 5th is 10 seconds. I mean, we've seen races where a driver crosses the line in second place, but drops to 6th in the final classification just because they bled over the white line by a few millimeters on corner exit too many times.
And the drivers argue that visibility is the core issue here.
Oh, definitely. With the massive 18-inch wheels and those aerodynamic wheel wake deflectors, they physically cannot see the white lines from the cockpit.
They're driving purely by feel, judging the track limit by the vibration of the curb through the suspension.
But the FIA's stance is completely uncompromising. The parameters of the circuit are fixed, and adapting to restricted visibility is part of the requisite skill set.
Exactly. But where the regulations become far more nuanced is in actual wheel-to-wheel combat. Drivers cannot drive dangerously, cause collisions, or weave under braking.
Right, specifically regarding that moving under braking rule. When a driver is defending a position on a straight, they're entitled to make one defensive move to break the slipstream, right?
Correct. But the second they enter the braking zone, their trajectory must be locked.
And the physics behind this rule are so critical to understand. Because when a trailing car is attempting an overtake, they are operating in the dirty air.
The turbulent, low-pressure aerodynamic wake generated by the leading car.
And this dirty air severely strips downforce from the front wing of the trailing car. To brake efficiently, the trailing car relies on aerodynamic load to push the tires into the asphalt.
So if the defending car suddenly swerves while heavily on the brakes, they drag that turbulent wake directly across the path of the trailing car.
The trailing car instantly loses front downforce right at the exact moment of maximum deceleration.
The front tires lock up, the driver becomes a passenger, and a high-speed collision is almost guaranteed.
It's not just unsporting, it's aerodynamically lethal.
This is why the stewards treat weaving and moving under braking with extreme prejudice.
The telemetry logs, steering input, brake pressure, lateral G-force, everything.
And if the data proves a driver changed their steering angle after maximum brake pressure was applied to block a rival, the penalty is severe.
Often a drive-through which costs like 20 to 25 seconds, or a 10-second stop-go penalty, accompanied by penalty points on their super license. Or even a grid drop for the next race.
Or outright disqualification in extreme cases.
But despite all the penalties, mechanical failures and human error are inevitable. Carbon fiber shatters.
Engines detonate.
Right. And when danger strikes, when the track is compromised, the race director has to intervene with flags and safety cars.
The yellow flags are the first line of defense. Danger ahead, slow down, no overtaking.
But when things are really bad, they deploy the safety car, which completely neutralizes the race. Cars bunch up in a tight queue, no overtaking.
And this fundamentally fractures the strategic landscape of the race.
Primarily because of the massive distortion in delta times. Pitting under a safety car is like using a VIP fast pass at a theme park while everyone else is frozen in line.
That's a great way to look at it. The mathematical advantage of pitting when the rest of the field is crawling at safety car speeds is massive.
Let's break down the delta.
Okay, so under green flag racing, a lap might take 90 seconds. The cars are covering ground at 300 kilometers per hour.
But the pit lane is strictly regulated to 80 kilometers per hour.
So diving into the pits, servicing the car, and navigating the exit lane costs a specific amount of time relative to the cars still racing on the track. Let's say that delta is 22 seconds.
If you pit under green conditions, you will emerge 22 seconds further down the road relative to a competitor who stayed out.
But when the safety car is deployed, the entire field is corralled. They are forced to drive at a drastically reduced pace. Suddenly, a lap takes 140 seconds.
But crucially, the pit lane speed limit remains exactly the same, 80 kilometers per hour.
Right, because the cars on the actual track are moving so much slower, they cover significantly less physical distance while you are stationary in your pit box.
The time loss relative to the field just collapses.
A pit stop that costs 22 seconds under green conditions might only cost 11 seconds under the safety car.
It is the ultimate strategic windfall. You essentially get a pit stop for half the price.
This is exactly why you see engineers screaming into the radio, "Box, box, box," the millisecond the safety car graphic appears.
But pitting under the safety car introduces a secondary challenge, doesn't it?
Thermal shock to the tires. When the drivers emerge on fresh rubber, they are forced to drive at the safety car's painfully slow pace.
The tires immediately plummet below their thermal operating window.
The drivers weave frantically, trying to inject energy into the sidewalls, but the surface temperature just bleeds away.
Which sets up immense danger for the eventual restart.
Exactly. When the safety car pulls in, the race leader dictates the pace. They bunch the pack up, waiting until the absolute last moment to aggressively apply the throttle.
And the cars behind have to react instantly, but they are doing so on stone-cold tires. Grip is non-existent, brake temps have plummeted.
Turn 1 becomes an exercise in sheer survival.
And if that survival fails, if a massive incident blocks the track entirely, or if torrential rain causes the cars to aquaplane even behind the safety car,
the race director has no choice but to deploy the ultimate neutralization, the red flag.
the ultimate reset. The race is completely suspended, cars return to the pits, and they line up in the fast lane.
Strategies reset, damaged cars can be repaired within limits, and new tires can be chosen.
Which introduces perhaps the most fiercely debated regulation in the entire sport.
The allowance of free tire changes under a red flag suspension.
It is a massive point of contention.
From a safety perspective, the FIA allows it because a driver might have run over carbon fiber debris from the incident that caused the red flag.
Right, forcing them to restart on potentially compromised structural rubber is an unacceptable risk.
Furthermore, if the red flag is caused by rain, teams must be allowed to bolt on extreme wet tires.
But the strategic implications are massive. Imagine a driver who has stretched their ancient hard tires to the absolute limit, praying for rain. They're about to be overtaken.
Suddenly, a crash causes a red flag.
They pull into the pits, and under the suspension rules, their mechanics can simply bolt on a fresh set of soft tires.
They get a free pit stop, maintaining their track position without ever having to serve the 22-second delta of a live pit stop.
It completely punishes the drivers who executed their strategy properly and pitted earlier under green conditions.
They took the time penalty, and now their rivals get the same fresh rubber for free, re-racing the advantage. It completely resets the competitive order.
And then the restart can be standing or rolling based on race order at the time of the flag, essentially creating a high-stakes sprint race to the finish.
It's a harsh reality, but it's universally applied. You just have to hope you're on the right side of the timing line when the flag drops.
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's a frantic safety car scramble or a meticulously planned green flag stop, every strategy ultimately relies on the flawless execution of the mechanics in the pit box.
Which brings us to the microenvironment of the pit lane.
Yes, because whether under a safety car or a scheduled stop, drivers eventually have to enter the most high-stakes, tightly regulated stretch of tarmac in the world.
The pit lane is arguably the most hazardous environment in motorsport.
You have cars traversing the fast lane at 80 kilometers per hour, sometimes 60 kph on tighter tracks, mere feet away from unprotected mechanics.
Mechanics who are operating high-torque pneumatic wheel guns and massive hydraulic jacks. The potential for catastrophic injury is immense.
Which is why the FIA has zero tolerance for operational errors.
None. The pit limiter itself is a fascinating piece of software. It's not just a cruise control.
Right, when the driver crosses the white entry line, they hit the limiter button on the steering wheel.
And the engine control unit immediately alters the engine mapping, intentionally retarding the ignition timing and cutting cylinders to prevent the car from physically accelerating past 80 kph.
Regardless of how hard the driver presses the throttle, the engine note actually changes to that distinctive, harsh, stuttering sound.
But the driver still has to brake precisely to hit their marks in the pit box, and the mechanics are pre-positioned.
A Formula One pit stop requires around 20 people operating in total synchronization.
In roughly 2 seconds, the car is lifted. 4 pneumatic guns spin off the single wheel nuts. The 18-inch wheels are pulled off. Fresh tires are slotted on. The guns torque the nuts back down, and the car is dropped.
But the sequence of safe releases is where the strict 2025 regulations explicitly toughen the rules, because the team bears the responsibility of releasing the car safely into the fast lane.
As one of the 16 key changes of the season, the automated traffic light system above the driver cannot give the green light until 2 absolute conditions are met.
First, the wheel nuts must be secured, and this isn't left to visual inspection anymore, is it?
No, the pneumatic wheel guns are equipped with torque sensors. They send an instantaneous telemetry signal to the gantry, confirming that the precise required torque has been applied to all 4 corners.
If the torque sensor does not register a locked nut, the software physically prevents the gantry light from turning green.
Because in the past, a cross-threaded nut might go unnoticed until the car accelerated, causing a loose wheel to fly off at high speed down the pit lane.
A lethal projectile.
Exactly. The sensor integration was a direct regulatory response to those unsafe releases.
And the second condition involves the fast lane itself. The team must ensure they are not releasing their driver into the path of an oncoming car.
The cars already established in the fast lane have absolute right-of-way. If a team drops the jack and waves their driver out, forcing an oncoming car to brake to avoid a collision, the stewards will immediately issue an unsafe release penalty.
And the penalties have escalated. It is no longer just a financial fine for the team. It translates directly into race time penalties for the driver.
The FIA determined that the only way to force teams to prioritize safety over half a second of pit stop speed was to threaten their track position.
It forces the teams to build incredibly robust fail-safes into their procedures. And speaking of the pit lane, we should briefly revisit the pit lane starters we talked about earlier.
Right, the drivers who broke Parc Fermé.
They sit behind the grid, but they have this massive advantage of being free from Parc Fermé restrictions to tweak their setup right before the lights go out.
It's a unique tactical flow for sure.
So, you navigate the Parc Fermé lockdown, survive the randomized launch, manage the tires, battle through the dirty air, exploit the safety car deltas, and hit your marks in the pit lane.
After 70 laps of this relentless physical and mental taxation, the checkered flag finally waves.
Lewis Hamilton crosses the line, the champagne tops.
But the race isn't actually over.
No, there is a final invisible hurdle, the invisible race.
Post-race scrutineering.
This is where victories are cemented or completely erased. The cars do not go back to the sanctuary of their team garages.
They are impounded in Parc Fermé under the absolute jurisdiction of the FIA technical delegates.
They perform a forensic inspection of the machines. The scrutiny is absolute. They measure weight, dimensions, fuel samples, tire compliance, and DRS systems against intensely detailed technical regulations.
Let's start with the weight. The car and driver must meet a strict minimum weight limit. If a driver sweat out 3 kilograms of water weight during a grueling race and the car burns slightly more oil than calculated,
The combined weight might drop below the limit.
which is exactly why you see the drivers driving off the racing line on the cool-down lap, aggressively swerving to pick up chunks of discarded rubber.
The marbles onto their hot tires.
Right. They are literally trying to add a few hundred grams of rubber to the car's total mass to ensure they survive the scales.
Because if you are under the weight limit by even 100 grams, it is an instant disqualification. And then there is the plank wear.
The plank. To prevent teams from running the cars dangerously low to seal the floor against the track, the FIA mandates a plank bolted to the underside of the car.
Fitted with those titanium skid blocks that create the iconic sparks. The regulations state that the plank must have a specific thickness, and it can only wear down by an absolute maximum of 1 millimeter over the entire race distance.
This is where the Friday setup gamble from Parc Fermé comes back to haunt teams. If a team miscalculated the suspension stiffness required for a heavy fuel load, the car will aggressively grind the plank into the asphalt for 2 hours.
During post-race scrutineering, the FIA measures the precise thickness of the skid blocks with calipers. If the wear exceeds 1 millimeter, the car was illegally low. Disqualification is absolute.
And the scrutiny extends to the chemistry of the fuel.
Yeah, they take a fuel sample and run it through a gas chromatograph, right?
Yes, and compare the chemical fingerprint to the baseline sample. If the team spiked the fuel to gain a horsepower advantage, instant disqualification.
They also perform deflection tests on the aerodynamics to ensure wings don't flex backward under load to shed drag.
The ultimate consequence here is that a Sunday result is never truly final until Monday. If a car fails any of these checks, they are disqualified entirely, regardless of finishing position.
And you know, this final check perfectly encapsulates the sport for me. It's engineers pushing every physical and legal boundary, and the FIA making sure nobody stepped an inch too far over the line.
A breathtaking ecosystem of innovation and restriction.
Which brings us full circle to the sheer magnitude of what happened today in Barcelona. Reevaluating Hamilton's context here.
Right. On June 14th, 2026, Lewis Hamilton didn't just drive faster than everyone else.
He successfully navigated one of the most rule-dense sporting environments on the planet to become the oldest winner in 50 years.
He beat the grid, and he survived the rulebook. He and Ferrari perfectly navigated the Parc Fermé lockdown, the randomized start lights, the mandatory compounds, strict driving limits, pit lane micro-rules, and the final threat of scrutineering.
It is a holistic triumph. And it leaves us with a truly fascinating trajectory to consider as we look toward the future of the sport. We've tracked this incredible escalation from human stewards to microsensors, from visual checks to torque sensors.
The parameters are tightening exponentially.
The telemetry is becoming omniscient. As the engineering margins approach absolute zero, you really have to wonder, will there come a day when the ultimate advantage belongs not to the team with the best aerodynamicist or even the bravest driver, but simply the team with the most creative lawyers reading the rulebook?
It is the inevitable endgame. When you can no longer innovate within the physics of the car, you must innovate within the syntax of the regulations. The legal margins become everything.
The legal margins become everything, a profound thought to cap off a historic day of racing. Thank you to everyone for tuning in as we explored the dense architecture of a Grand Prix Sunday. Stay safe and curious out there.